Okay, we'll move on with the lightning talks. Rather than me introduce them all, you've got the details on your timetable. But Manfred, first of all.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So this is something completely different. It's about reviewing the role of librarians in supporting students' digital capabilities. Now, what I try to do here in this 5 minutes is something like this. So I try to look at our role as librarians, as subject librarians, in a different context and see how this might change our role or how this might change our current practice. Now, the different thing is, as librarians, we usually work in an information literacy framework, and the idea was to look at our work in a digital literacy framework and see how this might change our role. Now, this wasn't my idea. I read this in this paper by Graham Walton, where he kind of suggests this idea of doing this and looking at our work in this different context. Now, the framework I use, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, is this one here. It's JISC Digital Capabilities Framework, the 6 elements of digital capabilities, which has this nice definition of digital capabilities as the capabilities that fit someone for living, learning, and working in a digital society. And JISC in 2015 came up with this framework here, which is basically the 6 elements. So it's about ICT proficiency, basic ICT skills. Then you can see here on the left information, data, and media literacy we're all very familiar with. And we have other things like digital creation, for example, or digital innovation, which is related to digital leadership, for example. Then on the left here, the orange one is digital learning, digital teaching as another digital capability. Then we have the broad area of digital communication, collaboration, and participation, which is a lot of social media in this. And then we have the last one of these elements, the digital identity and digital reputation management and digital well-being. So this is the framework. And just to mention it, so the higher education framework is based on this framework. So it's a little bit of a tweaks, but it's quite the same. Now, what I did, and this is actually was part of a master station I did, is to look in current practice and to have a look how librarians, how academic librarians actually support these different elements of the digital capabilities framework. Now, I did a literature review, and I asked some people at my university, Christ Church University in Canterbury, who are engaged with digital capabilities and developing digital capabilities in students. And I mean, just to make this short, because it's only 5 minutes, so this is in a way the outcome. So, and it's not very surprising. If you look at this in the literature and interview what people think about us, they see the librarian in this area here. Now, that's our thing. That's what we are doing, information literacy. Because it's in a digital literacy context, it's digital information literacy. I just want to highlight this. And media literacy, which is very much related to critical thinking, for example. We do a little bit of ICT proficiency because when students come to us, maybe we show them how to download a PDF and to save it in a folder. So that's very basic IT skills. We also do a little bit of digital learning and teaching because we have our digital learning objects, we do webinars, whatever. So this is involved. But this is the main thing. And when you look at the literature and when you ask people, this is what they think, how we support this framework. Although there are some examples where librarians support other things. And one of them is especially the red one, which is related to social media and things like this. So there are a lot of librarians supporting this. Now the question was, is this okay? Is this something that's fine? That's what we're doing. That's our basic thing here, supporting information literacy. And if we want, we can do a little bit of the other things. Or might there be a good strategic reason to do a little bit more? So should librarians support more of these elements of the framework? Now, to answer this question, I think it depends on 2 things. And this is what I want to highlight, especially the second one. First of all, it depends on if you are once interested in doing this, or if you have the confidence and the skill and the knowledge to do this. So do you have the confidence to stand in front of, sorry?
1 minute.
Okay, in front of students and tell them that you want to do something about digital capabilities. And the other one is the benefits. Now, one of the benefits is that digital literacy is very much related to strategy. This makes it very, very easy. It's related to most of the higher education strategies. It's very much linked to other strategic aims, which is employability and inclusion, and it's linked to standards like the TOEFL review, for example, or the MSc standards. This makes it a very, very easy way to go in. And in my opinion, it's sometimes much easier than information literacy because people listen if they hear the word digital capabilities, because it's something important. And it gives you a lot of opportunities to collaborate with other people, because there are a lot of different stakeholders in digital literacy, which is HR, it's careers, it's the learning technologists, it's IT, it's the library, it's the academics. So all of them, they want to collaborate in this area, which gives the librarian, and this is quite a good thing, a kind of a higher visibility, and it raises the profile, and it repositions us in the service. And okay. So let me come to the conclusion. That's really challenging 5 minutes. Now, what I just want to say is, so we do this, we support this. I think we should support, as our core thing, we should support information literacy, but I think it's very beneficial to think about how it can help us to kind of take on another hat, which is a digital literacy hat, and try to support our students in developing their digital capabilities, and so they are able to learn and work efficiently in a digital society. Thank you very much.
Right, so briefly I just want to show something that we're working with at Anglia Ruskin that's linked with the theme of sort of information literacy, digital literacy generally. I work at Anglia Ruskin University in this faculty, and I support specifically medicine and paramedic science and sort of allied health, public health. And we've just, some of you may know, we've just become a medical school, so I just want to briefly show you how what we're doing at Anglia Ruskin led me to do something slightly different or build on with the new medical students that we have. At Anglia Ruskin, we are developing a active curriculum. Probably nothing new to other universities, but at Anglia Ruskin we're calling it the active curriculum. And our Anglia Learning and Teaching have sort of developed a framework, and it's based on a series of literacies and a series of strands. So the yellow ones are the sort of strands that are within the curriculum, and then the bottom ones are the literacies, which obviously is where maybe the library comes in. And it's going to be being developed into a active framework. We've got a new learning and teaching strategy, we've got a new Pro-Vice Chancellor of Learning and Teaching, so things are really being developed and there's going to be a new sort of emphasis from September 2019. So this active curriculum very much engages with active learning, and it's not that we've not been doing active learning up to now, both lecturers and the library, but it's really being sort of, a three-line whip almost. And obviously the rationale behind it is to improve engagement, retention, things like that, to improve learning, because obviously the theory around active learning is that it does help, it's more inclusive, and it can help people to learn better, and it obviously fosters things like critical thinking, and obviously it helps with the employability, which is obviously big, and certainly at Anglia Ruskin, employability and the impact of education and getting better degrees is really important. And it was, it was lovely to hear this morning from Ruth Jenkins, with the new SILIT definition. Certainly, myself as a librarian, I think it's a really good definition now. It's sort of so much more proactive. It's really sort of helps, and it's sort of broader. And certainly within my role at Anglia Ruskin, I'm sort of using it to try and promote our role as helping students to actively learn and become more information literate for their degree and for their discipline, and that obviously it links. And I presented at the Teach Meet, where lecturers were, so it was trying to sort of promote the definition, and obviously linked my area with evidence-based healthcare. So just briefly, with the new medical students, I managed to get 2 sessions with them, which was really good. Often with some students, we only get 1 session. But with the new medical students, I had got 2 groups, 2 sessions. And in the first session, I was able to do sort of a very interactive, sort of more lecture, but lots of activities embedded within that. And then in the session 2, I sort of did it all active. They were doing the whole time. And that included things like, a quiz. I got them doing group work. I gave them, they had to go and find information, certain types of information. They then had to present that. I wanted them to tell me how they searched for it, how they evaluated, what criteria they came up with. I wanted them to reference it in our Harvard style that we use at Anglia Ruskin. I didn't mind how they did that. I left it very much to them to learn by doing interacting teamwork. And then they had to obviously present that, and we had a sort of whole group discussion. Probably, nothing revolutionary, but, enabled me to do that. So what did I learn by doing that? Well, the students, they certainly were motivated, they engaged, they collaborated, they, learned to be a team, they shared, they used their communication skills, they used feedback, feed forward, and they were using the skills that they're going to need to use as doctors. So it was trying to, promote the skills that they generally need as well as trying to learn information literacy. And then what did I learn as a librarian? Well, obviously I was trying to facilitate peer-to-peer learning. I was able to observe them and sort of see it through their eyes, how they all saw PubMed as a website. When I asked them to, they all used PubMed as their websites. Obviously helping them to learn through sort of formative assessment, feedback, feed forward, and it helped them to learn sort of threshold concepts in a sort of active way. And that's my references. So.
Okay, so we heard a lot about health literacy and some nice big statistics earlier. 61% of working age adults find it difficult. They don't have the necessary skills to interpret health information with the text and the numbers together. So there's a real need around this. We felt that we had to raise awareness of it in our trust. This is actually a true story from the last couple of weeks. We had a patient on a ward who was finding it difficult to sleep, and when the nurse says, "Hold on a minute, I'll go and get you something to help you sleep." On the next day, when she came back onto shift, she said, "Well, how did you get on? Did you have a good sleep last night?" And the patient said, "Yes, I slept very well, but I found them difficult to swallow." It's a true story. So, going back to this morning when we say health literacy can help you live, I think, it's very important that we raise awareness as health librarians on how information around health can be misinterpreted by patients. So what did we do to support this in our trust? Well, we looked at newly qualified and newly training staff groups in our trust, such as the preceptees, so the nurses that have just qualified and are doing their first year in practice, the newly qualified allied health professionals, the new staff group trainee nursing associates that were mentioned earlier, assistant practitioners and apprentices. Why? Well, these groups are quite often the ones that spend the most time with patients. Nurses are quite often tucked away doing paperwork these days, and they're really well positioned to employ the techniques of health literacy and to actually work alongside the patients themselves and their carers to signpost them to other sources of health information, to empower them to be partners in their long-term health and well-being. And also it's a really good time when we catch them at the beginning of their careers to really establish these really good habits before the bad habits seep in. When did we do it? Well, we did it during Keeping in Touch days. These are days when students may have finished their placements in the trust. They're waiting to find out whether or not they're going to be employed. We want to show that the trust is still investing in them, so we put in place training to support them. Also, we did it through study days, college release days for the TNAs and the assistant practitioners, and of course the apprentices now, which there are a lot rolling out, and at the very beginning of the preceptorships programme. What did we include? Well, we ran tailored activity-based workshops around 3 main core components. So we start off with a bit of the context around health literacy with some of those facts that Ruth talked about. We introduced communication tools based on those used by NHS Scotland and the Institute for Health Improvement, namely Teach Back and Chunk and Check. And then we will do a bit of an introduction around the reliable health information websites online, so that then the patients and carers know where to go and look. And that's why we feel there's a really good support there for long-term health and well-being. How did we do it? Well, we established links with the practice facilitators. We promoted 2 targeted leads within different departments, for example, the maternity department. And we really sold it that can be adapted to different levels of practitioners, so in terms of content. And we then sold it even further by if there were certain issues that different departments were looking at, we could tailor to that, for example, changes in medications, etc. What we're aiming to do now is to get embedded in as a core component in an induction program. Our workshops are sort of around 30 minutes to an hour and a half. We feel we could really create something good in terms of a full half-day workshop with lots of activities to really consolidate that learning and to really embed skills. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Natasha Howard. I'm the library manager at... Oh, is that not... Okay, great. I'm Natasha Howard. I'm the library manager at NELFT North East London Foundation Trust, and I'm going to tell you a bit about our current health literacy project. So this project has been a long time in the making. Back in 2013, I went to a Shell conference about consumer health information, and I heard about the Patient Information Forum's report on making the case for information. I took this back to some key players in the trust and was met with a resounding silence. Back in 2015, Ruth mentioned earlier on Knowledge for Healthcare, the NHS Libraries Development Programme. In 2015, I was asked to co-chair one of the groups working on patient and public information for that, which was great. I was doing all this work, finding out about everything going on around the country and still doing nothing locally. And then this time last year, I was asked if I had any ideas for some end-of-year money. Well, of course, I had loads of ideas. And so it came to pass. I got some money for a 12-month health literacy project manager, so 12 months full-time fixed term. Ruth Jenkins started with us in November, so we're now 4 months in. So far, we have done a baseline health literacy awareness survey among our clinical colleagues, which we're hoping to feed into a quality improvement project. We've designed a leaflet for patients and the public. We've done some internet and intranet content. We've done a lot of making contacts internally and externally. And those meetings, scheduling, rescheduling, having those meetings taken up a lot of time. We've worked with one of our child and adolescent mental health services to help them set up a reading group. They're using the reading agency's shelf-help reading list. And the other really visible thing that we've done is some drop-in sessions with our colleagues at Redbridge Public Libraries. So health information drop-ins there. So there's a dodgy selfie of me and Catherine at one of our drop-in sessions, and also some leaflets. If anyone did want a copy of the leaflet, I do have a few with me. So future plans for the next 8 months then. So we want to do some training for our clinical colleagues, some health literacy awareness training, some face-to-face training, hopefully some e-learning that can be embedded into our learning management system. We're going to mail shot the 600 managers in our trust. It's a bit retro, it's a bit with this paper and sustainability, but we do occasionally still do mail shots because we find that it reaches people that email just doesn't. We've got a potentially very exciting link with local GPs, which should see us running health information drop-in sessions in GP surgeries, perhaps to coincide with particular clinics that it might be of relevance to. We're going to be collaborating. We already collaborate with our NHS colleagues in North East London, and we had started doing some work with our public library colleagues in the same footprint, but we're hoping to make that more deeper and actually have some really good outcomes from that. We missed the opportunity to co-produce our leaflet, to truly co-produce it with service users, so we're hoping that the next knowledge assets items that we make can be actually co-produced with some service users. And then funding. So I only have the funding up until November at the moment, so my key thing is I need to find some more money. So, thank you. So challenges then. Recruitment was really challenging. This was a new post that I'd created. It was a fixed term post. I had to advertise twice and I had to come up with a creative solution to get someone on board. Evidencing impact. NHS libraries have a toolkit for evidencing impact, but it doesn't quite cover what we're doing, so still something I need to work on. There's a lot of interest in the project from clinical staff, but transferring that into engagement with us is challenging. And then joining the dots, all these conversations we're having with people are opening different doors, making us aware of different programs and themes. And it's a bit like a treasure hunt, which I'm hoping will lead us to the sustainable funding so that we can keep this work going. Do follow the library. That's the library's Twitter handle, where you'll find out more about the project.
So, for a bit of context, I work at the medical library at the University of Cambridge, and I work in a sort of teaching and training role. And the people who are coming through the doors to that training can range from anyone undergraduate level in medicine and other sort of related subjects, right up to PhD students, researchers in medical subjects in the university, and people working in the local NHS trust in basically any healthcare provision role. So, what is this certificate that I am undertaking and talking to you about today? So the one that I'm doing is a year-long course, and it's open to anyone within the University of Cambridge who teaches or supports learning, and this obviously includes library staff as well. Most other universities run similar courses for their staff. There may be other people in the room who are undertaking similar courses or who have done in the past. And the idea is that it's a mixture of theoretical sort of studies, reading educational research, and also putting techniques into practice in your teaching settings, having peers on the course come and observe you, and discussing and reflecting on the things that you've learned. And the aim is that you produce a 1,000-word portfolio, which is a mixture of research, essays, and reflective writing. And obviously you receive a qualification. One of the attractions for me is, before I was a librarian, I was a PhD student, a PhD researcher. Being concise is not my strong point. And so something that had a very sort of academic focus and structure was very appealing to me to getting this kind of qualification. I'm doing it this year, and I'm about halfway through. So apart from the concision reasons, why am I doing this course? I felt that although I had good sort of practical experience of teaching and systems in place for reflecting on my experiences, I didn't really have a solid understanding of the educational theory that was current and that was sort of possibly useful to my research and teaching. So I wanted to develop myself as an educator and obviously gain a qualification. And it's very important to me that my teaching is evidence-based, and that's not just the evidence based on my own experiences and reflections. It needs to be based on the evidence that's coming from research. And I wanted to make sure I was aware of trends and debates within that research. And then obviously adapt and modify what I'm doing based on what I had learned. So what are the outcomes and changes of what I have learned so far? Firstly, learning to let go. I realised just a few months in from the course that I was not doing enough student-directed learning, letting my students find their own way through the material. I was much more concerned with standing up at the front of the room and directing them to click through a series of buttons and search databases in exactly the same way that I would be doing, because obviously it was the best way. I learned that there were ways that I could flip the classroom, even if I wasn't sort of getting to the stage of producing videos and tutorials that students would watch before coming in. Instead, my technique of flipping the classroom is just to provide much more space for the students to go through exercises on their own, do peer learning with one another, rather than sort of sticking rigidly to a plan where they're following along step by step, because they weren't actively learning. And they can learn much more from each other, because one of the things that I learned on the course was that students are much better placed to teach each other because they have the direct experience of what it is like to be learning this material for the first time. Whereas I learned it many years ago, I don't remember how difficult it was to learn. And obviously a greater awareness that not one size fits all is not going to work. I had a massive range of students in my class, undergrads up to PhD students and researchers. If I'm teaching with a one-size-fits-all approach, only some students are going to learn, whereas if I let them direct their own learning to a much greater degree, everyone, no matter their level of experience, is going to come out of the class having learnt something. And one of the most important things I learnt were techniques for testing the efficacy of changes. So one of the sort of pieces of reading that we looked at was a book by some researchers called Thomas Anderson and Patricia Cross, Classroom Assessment Techniques. Now you hear the word assessment and what I thought first was grades, quizzes that I would be implementing in the class, but it's much more to test your efficacy as a teacher than their learning gain from your classes. It's techniques such as minute papers, getting the students to summarise what they've learnt in a minute, or write down within a minute the 3 things they found most difficult, and sort of look at patterns that are emerging from these assessment techniques and changing based on these patterns if necessary, changing what I'm teaching, changing my approach. So these are just some of the outcomes and changes. No doubt I will make more as the course continues and hopefully ongoing afterwards. I know we're asking questions at the end, so I will finish up there. Thank you all very much.
I'm Eleanor Barker, and I also work at the University of Cambridge Medical Library. I work alongside Veronica. In November last year, we ran a STEM showcase for the first time. And what a STEM showcase is a different way of teaching students, this was postgraduate specifically, about different information resources that they might find helpful in their studies and in their future careers. So it's done in sort of a speed dating format. So they have about 20 minutes to learn about each different resource. And it gives them an opportunity to learn about all kinds of different resources, and they get to choose what it is that they learn about. And it happens at lunchtime, so they're given food, so hopefully that will encourage them to come. And it runs at 12 till 2, so hopefully it's not clashing with other things, so they can't use the excuse that they're busy. It's happening in a time where hopefully they're free so that they can come. And they can kind of come and drop in and go out and do what they want, so they can sit in on one session, or they can sit in on as many as they want, or they can just come, have some food, grab the handouts and go. So it's entirely up to them what they get out of it. So this is what we did in November 2018. So you can see we sort of themed the resources that we told them about, and then they get to choose exactly what it is that they want to go to. And so I ran the Mendeley session, as you can see. What I wasn't expecting was for somebody to come along and think that I was from Mendeley itself, and they came with a very specific question, which threw me a little bit, but there we are, I wasn't expecting that. But yeah, so there's all kinds of different things that you can see there. And then we ran a second one in January. This is a photograph of the e-learning suite within the clinical school building. So the first one that we did was held in the centre of Cambridge. And the room that it was in, unfortunately, wasn't the most suitable because we had to move the furniture around. It had been set up for a traditional teaching setup. So we spent a long time moving the furniture around, getting it set up how we wanted it. And it was very cramped. There wasn't much room for people to move around. But the advantage of that room was that we could eat food in there. Unfortunately, with the e-learning suite, as you can see, it's very nice and it's quite new, and we weren't allowed food in there or drink. So it meant that the students had to eat out in the corridor and then come back in. So hopefully next time we'll have a better venue. We're going to run it again, probably in November again later this year. So this is what we did in the second one that we ran. So what we asked the students to do is to let us know what they found most helpful, their favourite thing. Unfortunately, there's no prizes for the person who's leading the favourite thing, which would be nice. But so you may notice from this that there's your career has been very popular. So we had somebody come along from the career service, and yeah, the students really liked that. So it was collaborating not just within libraries in Cambridge, but outside of the library too. So what are the benefits of teaching like this? Well, it's a good way to reach out to students. Like I said, we give them free food, so hopefully that will encourage them to come, and it happens at lunchtime, so it's a time when they're free. It gives them the opportunity to learn what they want to learn about, and you can cover quite a few resources in quite a short space of time, so that's quite useful too. On a personal note, I found it really helpful. It was a chance to network with colleagues from other libraries and also from the Careers Service. And it was also an opportunity to learn about other resources that maybe I wasn't quite so familiar with. And as we'd all prepared handouts, there was information to take away. So it was useful for my own development too. And as I've already mentioned, it was a networking opportunity. We had a chat with a lady from the Careers Service after the session, and she gave us some useful contacts and some other events that we could follow up on after the event. And another thing was it taught us how to present information in quite a concise way, because we only had 20 minutes with each slot. So so it was useful for that as well. Okay, thank you very much. That's the STEM showcase.
Great. So my name is Ruth Jenkins. I'm an academic support librarian at the University of Edinburgh, and I support the medical school, so primarily biomedical sciences and undergraduate medicine. In the undergraduate reproductive biology degree, we've just done our 4th year of a Wikipedia assignment in the research skills course. Students are asked in groups to research a topic where there currently isn't an article on Wikipedia on that subject, and use the biomedical literature to actually write that article and publish it. Wikipedia is the 5th most used website in the world and one of the most consulted health information sources in the world. And actually the quality control, particularly for medical articles on there, is pretty good. So why not get students actually contributing to that knowledge base that people are using, and evaluating what makes a good article on Wikipedia and improving the health information that's available. So it's run by the course lead for reproductive biology and the program lead. So Dr. Richard Smith, who's the course lead for research skills, and Dr. Simon Riley, the program lead. The university's Wikimedian in residence, Ewan McAndrew, and myself as their academic support librarian. So because I'm short of time, I'm only going to focus on my role within it. We have 2 3-hour sessions with the students. The first is all to do with research, and that's primarily what I'm going to talk about today. And the second is actually writing up their articles. So after an introduction to the assignment and writing for Wikipedia from Ewan, I introduce the students to the resources that they can use to find the source material for their articles. So I introduce our discovery system, tools they'll be familiar with like Google Scholar and PubMed, but also more advanced databases like Medline that they might not have used yet. So I get them to explore these resources, do a bit of scoping, and discuss the resources with each other as well. So with writing medical articles on Wikipedia, there's fairly strict guidance. One of the key pieces of guidance is around the type of source that you use. So for Wikipedia articles about medical topics, we're really looking to use secondary sources. So the consensus of scientific opinion, so things like systematic reviews and textbooks, not a primary source like clinical trials, which can be a bit of a shock for our students. Up until now, they've been told RCTs are really what they should be looking for. So a bit of a shock. Also, for many of these students, this is the first time they've done a literature search or a literature review, and this year they have to do a dissertation. So kind of important skill. So what we're asking the students to do is find the material, but also evaluate it. So really thinking about the types of sources that they're using as well as the content. So our students are getting experience in information literacy because they're finding and selecting material, but also they need to understand it and evaluate it. And also science communication, to be able to summarize the biomedical literature for a lay audience on Wikipedia. Personally, I find it really valuable to see the results of the students' hard work live on beyond the time frame of the assignment. That's something that I don't tend to see with a traditional literature review essay. It will get filed away in the marker's filing cabinet and I'll never see it again, if I ever saw it after meeting with a student to look at literature reviewing and searching. So I've got up on the screen an article on Wikipedia about high-grade serous carcinoma. It's the most common type of ovarian cancer, and it's also the most deadly. And up until 2016, it didn't have a Wikipedia article until our students actually wrote it. Thank you. So this was written in 2016, and I'm just going to go to the history page and the page views, and we can actually see how impactful writing this article has been. I'm just going to change this to all time, and I don't know if you can see that on the screen, it might be a bit small, but this article has been viewed over 58,000 times since it was written. And like I said, this is the most common type of ovarian cancer, so people are very likely to be coming on the internet to look up this type of cancer. So like I said, it's really valuable to actually see the students' work live on, but also in the public domain where it can actually get used and they're actually having a real impact. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Jose, I'm the faculty librarian for the Faculty of Health and Social Sciences at Bournemouth University. So today I'd like to tell you a little bit of my experience of coming out of my comfort zone when I taught critical thinking skills in a specific unit. We run a menu of study skills sessions at Bournemouth University. This is our lit guide with the menu on the calendar. And one of the new sessions that we've created is the critical thinking session. That gave me the opportunity to embed a critical thinking session within a unit called Promoting Health and Well-Being. This is all about the students critiquing a public health campaign, things like that. So you can see the unit here. This is our VLE called Bright Space. I actually have my own section there, and I taught this unit to the students from clinical exercise science, occupational therapy, and nutrition. So for this session to make sense to the students, I had to change it. The other session is more the general session that we do with all the students can book onto. This one I tried to make sure that I made sense to the assignment. So I kind of reinforce an idea they are taught during this unit is about thinking about the different needs. This is an idea that comes from Bradshaw, 1972. There are 4 kinds of needs: normative need, felt need, comparative need, and expressed need. So I introduce them to this idea, I reinforce what they learn, and I try to find links to looking at public health issues from different perspectives. I love literature. It's my big thing. I just need to add literature to absolutely everything I do if I can. So I've used a play by a great writer, by Ibsen. This is An Enemy of the People, where a doctor discovers that the waters of a town are contaminated, the baths in a town are contaminated, and adamant that the waters that close for 2 years. But there are other issues, economic issues, things like that. So I asked the students to read a scene, and I asked them, do you think he's a hero or a stubborn character? Is he an enemy of the people? So that's how I introduced them to the idea of looking at things from different perspectives. After doing that, I look at a campaign. This is kind of a health university campaign. It's called Health University. This has been created by University of Central Lancashire and Manchester Metropolitan University. So I just asked them a few questions about whether they think the mission statement is clear, whether they think the layout is clear for members of the public, things like that. So just start nicely with a web page and images and things like that. After that, I go on to full-on reading academic papers. So I give them an example from a primary research article, so it's a qualitative paper and a systematic review. And what I do is I ask them to apply 2 critical appraisal tools. One of them is Understanding Health Research by the Medical Research Council and other bodies, and the other one is the Critical Appraisal Skills Program, the CASP checklists. So after we have a discussion about that obviously that gives them prompts, so they don't have to think about the questions, they just kind of ready-made questions. The feedback, so did get some feedback. So you started this session this year, and the feedback we got something called mid-unit student evaluation at Bournemouth University. Thank you. And also feedback during the sessions. The feedback I got was the occupational therapy students were a bit more advanced. This actually was a level 5 unit. So some of them felt that what I was telling them was maybe a bit basic. So, however, nutrition and clinical exercise, we were happy with the content. So maybe next time I do it next year, I would probably take that into consideration, maybe change some of the things I do and maybe tweak a little bit for the occupational therapy students. Okay, thank you.